Welcome back to the Jane Austen 250th Anniversary Block of the Month Sew Along. I'm Cindy Cloward, and today we are working on the Winchester block. If you're from the UK, you probably pronounce it Winchester. I've been practicing since my visit. So last month we worked on the Kent block, so congratulations if you finished all the Kent blocks. If you're still working on it, A-okay, just pace yourself, and this content is evergreen, but today let's talk about Winchester. So Jane Austen is very closely connected to Winchester. As her health declined in 1817, her family had her moved to Winchester, a larger city with more options of health care. She spent her final weeks there and died at age 41, July 18, 1817, and is buried in the Winchester Cathedral. So it is an honor to work on this block today. So as always, we start out with our pattern, and our pattern for this particular block is featured on pages 17, 18, and 19. All the fabric requirements are listed for all 4 blocks. Let's review the blocks. This is block number 1. This is block number 2. I love the variation in color. This is block number 3, the actual block we're going to work on today, because I'm going to talk about a fussy cut option for this center. This one is not fussy cut, and I'm going to show you an option that you can fussy cut with this fabric. And then this is block number 4. So I have previously cut out everything you need for block number 3. It's featured on this design board, but I did want to talk about the option of fussy cutting. Now, you get a 10-inch square, which is ample fabric to do all 3 blocks. And if you want a fussy cut, you have that option. So let's talk about how you'll need to cut your fabrics from this for all 3 blocks. So here's an example of the 10-inch square. Now this is what you end up with if you use the fussy cut option of the 10-inch square for all 3 blocks. This is for the Berkshire block, and this is the template you'll need for that. And it's not really important how you fussy cut, to have that fussy cut. This is for the Kent block. You just need this little button on the top of the flower. You just have to make sure they're all going in the same direction. So you don't really have to, it's not super important if you fussy cut these out. You just want them going the right direction. But what's fun for this Winchester block is that you can fussy cut an interesting image. So if you look at this, this is an example of a 10-inch square, and you won't necessarily get the same images in my 10-inch square, but I want to show you a couple options that you could fussy cut. So this is like Pemberley, that's super cute. This is a basket of flowers, that might be fun to fussy cut. Even just a quilt block, but my favorite image, because this fabric is from the Pride and Prejudice collection, is Lizzie and Mr. Darcy. So I'm going to choose to fussy cut that out. And in this 10-inch square, I could also fussy cut that out. So this is, I think it's 3.5 by 3.5 that you need to cut out. Yep, that's right. And so that's your interfacing. But you can use your templates to put on top of your images and see how you want to fussy cut. Even for these, if you have a certain, if you're going to be so particular, you can use your templates to kind of see where you want to go. So you cut out that square, and you can even put the template on there and just make sure it's where you'd like to go. And that's how I fussy cut this. It's an extra step, and again, you don't have to do this step. I just think it's kind of fun with the images in this fabric. Okay, so let's go to making this block. Now, we've already talked about this previously in the first video, the Austen block, about how to create your bias tape. So I'm not going to review that again. Go back to that video, and I've already got my little bias tape. These are 1.5 inches And aren't those adorable? So those are already cut out, and now we need to make the rest of these flowers. So let's start with that fussy cut center. I'm gonna grab my template, and I'm just gonna trace it around. They give you plenty of room with the interfacing to do that. You could use your rotating mat for this if you want. And you're gonna do that 4 times, but each one of these blocks has a different fabric. So you can choose to do 1 block at a time or do all your center squares, you know, all together, whatever works for you. And again, this interfacing is just see-through enough that you can look at placement, and doesn't Lizzie Bennet and Mr. Darcy look just perfect there. I can even get their feet and their hat in there, Mr. Darcy's hat, and you just kind of adjust it, and it's good to go. It was meant to be, right? So let's take this to the machine, and we are gonna sew this one. Let's grab our other 2 that we're gonna work on. Now, this is the leaf that we're gonna work on right here. So this leaf right here, and we're gonna, so I've already traced this out. We're gonna sew along that. And then we've got this flower here, and you can do a little adjusting too if you wanna fussy cut that in a particular spot, because there's nothing that goes on top of that. So if you want that flower centered, you have room for adjustment. There, that's good to go. I want it to go there. I'm gonna take all 3 of these to the machine. I am using an 80 weight thread, and my stitch length is 1.85, and we are just going to get started. Just pivot around. Now sometimes if the stitch is going to go outside of there, I will just kind of lift up that stitch and move it myself exactly where I want it to stop before I pivot. So that's one option. You can decrease your stitch length so it can be a tighter stitch length if you're not going to, if you feel like your stitch is going to go over that corner area. I'm going to have to ease that one right there. There we go. Now I'm just going to go over my stitches of where I started. Just a few stitches. Just like we've done before. Take those curves nice and easy, turning your fabrics. You're interfacing in your fabric. You just take 2 or 3 stitches and adjust your base fabric and interfacing. I'm gonna just, there, that's a perfect pivot on those little cleavages or those little spots. You wanna end right as close to your line as possible, so sometimes I just work it. Okay, one more. Again, always better to start on a straight than a curve. to that cleavage right there. And it's almost right on. Again, you can adjust it a little bit if it feels like it's gonna overshoot that cleavage. All right, let's take a look at these. Now it's time to trim down. It says 1/4 inch. I do just slightly under 1/4 inch. And I cut off my tips on those corners. Oh, that was a little tight. You don't want to get it too close to those stitches. You gotta have, so kind of eyeball it, but really important to cut off your tips. Close to the threads. There you go. Now on the outside curves, you do not have to do any clips close to the threads. I just cut this all out like that. There you go. I'm going to use my little snips for the, you're going to always do that little cleavage there. There you go. So that one's done. So the outside of the curve, we do not have to clip close to the threads. Just gonna trim around. But right there, do you see that? Cleavage, couple clips to the right, to the left. Okay, these are all prepared, and now we need to turn them right side out. So like we've done previously, you know the drill. We're gonna make an X. Make an X on both of these. Pull it clear away from your base fabric. And this one, you're just gonna cut across both leaves like that. So there you go, that's what it looks like. Okay, let's turn right side out. Let's start with the leaf. So because you have this corner, I stick my, I usually do my middle finger like this. I stick it in the middle of the leaf like that. And now I'm gonna flip it inside out, or right side out. See that? That's an easy way to do that. Let's do it on this side. Here we go. I kind of just fold over with my thumb the seam. There we go. And then you kind of roll those edges. And take your little turning tool. And I roll those edges a little bit, and then I'm going to give it a quick press so my, my stitches are warm. So let me give it a quick press, take it over here. Okay. I pressed that down a little bit. Now you can work that, especially the corners, get them really curved out. The longer you take here, the better it'll be to, the less work you have to do on your applique to get those corners turned. Okay, so that's looking really good. I'm gonna put it with my other three there. This is our fussy cut center. Again, you don't have to take this step. I just think it's kind of fun. And whatever image you choose or can get out of your 10-inch stacker just makes it just an added bit of charm, right? Okay, I flip each one of those corners inside out. I just, again, put my middle finger in there and just flip it out. Tell all 4 sides. Then I work those corners. And if you cut off your tips, you get that nice corner there. It's not a perfect square. It kind of has it has that little curve, that subtle curve on all 4 sides. There we go. And that is looking so cute. Let's give it a little press. Okay, see if there's anything else you want to work. I think you just want to make it uniform on all 4 sides. So it's not going to be a perfect point, but you just give it a little push, and isn't that looking good? Okay, flower. Again, these little curves right here, I just pop them out. And then I pop like 2 out, and then the rest you can just turn with your fingers. Okay, here we go. Work that curve. Now I'm going to pop out those little teeny curves. There we go. Now I'm going to give this a press. See, I have a few jaggedy edges. Let's see if I can smooth those out. You can see how I fussy cut that flower. I really like that. With my fabric still warm, I'm going to really try and get those curves a little bit, a little rounder. How about that? A little rounder. And any pokey edge I will fix when I hand applique, or you can roll it under if you're machine appliquing. And then I just kind of roll it with my finger. There is one edge that's kind of pokey, and I'm just going to fix that when I applique. Okay, all your shapes are ready to go. You've got your teeny little stems. We're going to move our pieces, our So Simple shapes, and we're going to go to arranging our block. Again, you know the routine. This is a 10-inch square that eventually will be trimmed down. I'm going to press this. This will be trimmed down to 8.5 by 8.5. Okay, we'll fold it over here. And I do another fold. These are our markings. Okay, we'll move that over here. All right, let's lay this out. You can use your applique pins if you want, but because you have these folds, the center little unit right here, you can just even put it, the corners are gonna be on that fold right there. So that's a really easy way to get started on that. And then on each of the corners is you're going to have these leaves. So look, this block comes together so easily. So that goes on the fold. You can kind of eyeball it too, because that cleavage right here is just a continuation up there. There. And again, if it feels fiddly, you can put some applique pins down that feels helpful to you. Just gonna kind of secure that down just a little bit. Okay, our flowers just kind of meet right in the center of that. And you see the center of this flower right here? I mean, you can eyeball it. You don't even need to fold it. but if it's helpful to fold it, just go ahead and do that. So this center of this flower right here, again, goes on that corner fold. You see that? And it just kind of, I don't know, just a little millimeter between the leaf and that flower, and you just adjust it. And then after I put those on, you put these little things, these little stems. Now you don't want the stems to go below the leaf, so you want to put the bottom of the stem right here, tucked under there, and then the majority of the stem is going to be right there, underneath the flower. Just a teeny little piece. Now you can, again, you can use your applique pens. You can get out your trim up ruler, 8.5 inch. You have to take your applique pens out for that, and you can lay it on top and make sure everything is lining up. It's looking pretty good. Okay, and then the next step, you make your adjustments, your measurements. You can get out your ruler, make sure these are just all kind of even. I would have to adjust these right here so these sides are even. And then you'd start gluing down all your parts. So I would, again, start with my center, and then just like little pins, you're gonna just glue press that down. I would probably flip these over. And I'd probably take that off just a little bit. You could do your teeny little stems. Again, as much glue as you don't want to get any glue on the sides. Avoid that all possible. Close to the edge, because that's where you're going to sew. And I'm going to flip that over. Or you can choose to glue down below, but. Okay, and then you just work around till it's all ready to go. You can put this trim it ruler on there. And you know what's really good to hold weight on this is our large clapper. So you could put that on. Leave it there for a couple hours or overnight, and it's ready to go, ready to be sewn the next day. So let me just give you a couple of applique tips for this block. I am going to get out the one that's already previously been prepped. This has not been fussy cut. It's very cute either way. So, okay, let's take a look at this. I always start from the center, inside out. I get a matching thread. And again, you get a thread that's slightly darker, and when you get one strand, then it's usually a perfect match. So if you're auditioning thread, again, go slightly darker. I usually start on the side, take your teeny little stitches, again, right next to it, advance underneath. And we're going to go all the way around then. Okay, so we're gonna pretend that we've gone all the way around this square. The next thing I would move to is this leaf. And you can use, you could switch out for the stems. This darker green for the stems matches better. Or you can just get something that matches the leaf and it just kind of fudge around that stem. So you don't have to switch out threads. If that makes sense. So I haven't knotted that. Okay, let's start right here. So when I'm working on the leaf, I always start in the middle right here. Again, I make sure everything's lined up. I make sure that's lined up with the tip right there. I'll put my knot underneath. And then you can kind of angle it like this. Again, this is already going to be sewn down. And you see there's different colors here, and I have like this really light sagey green thread. I think it's our songbird confetti cottons. But if you go right on the edge and maybe slightly toward the outside where that interfacing is right there, you can kind of just hide it a little bit so it doesn't matter that you're going into different colors of the fabric. Again, I just take teeny little stitches and advance underneath. And you're coming to the side. I did want to talk about, as I'm coming around that bend, I did want to talk about how to pull in. We've talked about this before, but how to pull in those corners when you haven't sewn a perfect corner. It's not prepped perfectly, because that's normal, that is normal, but we are going to refine that corner with our applique. So we're coming around here. I'm going to pull that thread down a little bit. And do you see that? That could use a little more smoothing out. So I'm going to take the tip of my needle right here, pull it underneath the interfacing, right like that. I'm going to pull it under. You see that? I'm tucking that, and then I hold it with my thumb right there as I stitch around that corner. Okay. All right, you're just going to finish stitching around to here. You got to make sure that center cleavage is right here, is centered in that stem. I would stitch down to here. And then I would stitch, just really hiding my stitches up, hide my stitches underneath, just go across on the back and then stitch down and finish on these curves ending here. I would do the same thing for this flower. I would start in the center here, just check it again, make sure that is centered on that corner, and I would stitch all the way around these curves ending here, just pulling in those little pokey areas, smoothing out that flower, and it's gonna look so nice. So those are my tips for the Winchester block. Join me next month for the Bath block. As they say in the UK, very posh, Bath. So take a look at the Bath block. And we'll see you next month for Bath.